Close with Desires. Follow Jack as he grapples with a past love and moves towards finding love again. This story, based on the song Close with Desires by Teo Glacier, attempts to encapsulate Jack's internal struggle and emotional turmoil of being stuck in the past and his endeavor to move forward. Jack stumbles upon his old flame, Lucy, in a new city. The encounter stirs up old feelings as they reminisce about their past. Chapter 1. Oh my God, unexpected encounter with ex-lover. Just another regular Tuesday afternoon, or so Jack thought as he strolled into the quaint corner cafe. It was the perfect spot to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. The soft aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled his senses, creating an instant comforting blanket around his tired soul. As he approached the counter, his eyes idly scanned the cafe, enjoying the soft melange of chatter and the clatter of crockery. Suddenly, his heart did a swift backflip. Sitting across the cafe, engrossed in a book, was a painfully familiar figure. It was her, Lucy, his ex-lover. His heart clenched at the sight of her, a mixed cocktail of emotions coursing through his veins: surprise, pain, longing, anger. Their eyes locked, and the world stood still. Those hazel eyes he once lost himself in were just as captivating as he remembered. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Jack could almost see the whirlwind of emotions swirling in her gaze. Lucy put down her book, and her lips curved into a hesitant smile. The sight of it was a punch to his gut. It was that same smile that once had the power to sweep away all his worries. Now it just resurfaced memories he'd spent months trying to bury. Forcing a casual demeanor he did not feel, Jack nodded in acknowledgement, his mind racing. Should he approach her? Would it just rip open old wounds, or would it give him the closure he craved? His heart pounded in his chest as if it was trying to escape. But he was Jack Ramsey, and he never backed down. With a deep breath, he pushed away his fears and moved towards Lucy's table. "Lucy," he said, his voice steady but strained. "Jack," she replied, her voice fluttering like the pages of the book in front of her. A silence fell over them, thick and suffocating. The past hung in the air like a tangible entity, a reminder of what was lost. There was so much left unsaid. Questions unanswered, emotions unexpressed. Jack cleared his throat. "How have you been?" The question hung in the air, innocent in its intention, but loaded with a history that neither of them could forget. Lucy paused, seemingly contemplating her answer. "I've been okay, Jack," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. The unsaid words in her "okay" lingered, creating a tension that was as electrifying as it was painful. Their conversation was as quiet and strained as their breakup had been loud and tumultuous. Each word was a carefully hidden trap, each sentence a potential minefield. The cafe, which moments ago had been a comforting sanctuary, was now a battlefield of emotions. As he made small talk with Lucy, the woman he once thought was the love of his life, Jack couldn't help but think about the irony of it all. Here he was, talking about the weather with a woman with whom he'd shared dreams, tears, laughter, and his heart. Maybe this is how we move on, he thought, trying to convince himself. Maybe this is how we forget. But deep down he knew, as he watched Lucy leave the cafe, he wasn't any closer to forgetting about the past than he was before this unexpected encounter. As he sat alone, staring at the now cold cup of coffee, he wondered, could you ever truly forget about a love that once consumed you? This is chapter 1 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 2. Jack finds himself looking at old text messages and pictures, trying to read between the lines of what went wrong. Meanwhile, Lucy struggles with her own feelings, leaving her messages to Jack unread. Chapter 2. He texted, she ignored. Tension builds up. After their chance encounter in the cafe, Jack found himself completely submerged in a sea of memories. Lucy had once been his life, the sun around which his world orbited, and seeing her again had ignited the dormant embers of their shared past. Their conversation, although tense and forced, echoed in his mind, bringing with it a rush of emotions and thoughts he had spent months trying to suppress. One quiet night, he gave in to the restless thoughts plaguing his mind. The hour was late, and the world around him was wrapped in silence. The only sound was the faint humming of the city outside his window, and his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. With his thoughts revolving around Lucy, he picked up his phone and did something he never thought he would. He texted Lucy. He simply wrote, "Hi," a word so ordinary yet charged with a million unsaid feelings. His thumb hovered over the send button, his heart pounding loudly in his chest. The moment felt heavy, loaded with the weight of their past, their love, their breakup, and everything in between. After what felt like an eternity, he pressed send. The message was out in the universe now, bridging the gap that time and distance had created. With the message sent, a strange calmness washed over Jack. He had reached out. He had taken a step. Now, all he could do was wait for Lucy's reply. But the reply never came. Minutes turned into hours, hours morphed into days, and yet there was nothing. Her silence was louder than any words she could have sent. Every time he checked his phone, only to find no new messages, he felt a sting. It was a simple text, a mere 3-letter word, yet its absence spoke volumes. He found himself checking his phone more often than he would like to admit. Each time the screen lit up, his heart leapt, only to sink again. The ignored message hung over him like a cloud, casting a shadow over his day. The casual conversations he had with others seemed meaningless, as his mind was occupied with the thought of the ignored text. Days passed, and the weight of the unread message did not lessen. If anything, it became a constant reminder of the distance between them. Jack's mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. He overthought every scenario, every possibility. Perhaps she hadn't seen it yet, or maybe she was deliberately ignoring him. Each passing hour seemed to add to his agony. Then came the realization, a cold, hard fact that he had known but chosen to ignore. He was not over Lucy. Seeing her again, reaching out to her, and now this silence, everything pointed to the fact that he was far from moving on. Lucy was still very much a part of his life, even if only in his heart and thoughts. Jack was left with a cocktail of emotions, disappointment, frustration, and a pinch of hope that refused to die. The ignored message was a painful reminder of his not-so-distant past, but it also served as a wake-up call. It was time for him to face his feelings head-on. It was time to deal with the feelings he had been suppressing. He was still healing, and it was a journey he had to undertake, no matter how painful it was. As Jack stepped into a new day, he felt a sense of determination washing over him. He was down, but he wasn't out. The ignored text was a setback, but it wasn't the end. He had a long journey ahead, a journey to healing and acceptance, and he was ready to embark on it. This is chapter 2 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 3. Jack reflects on how he gave his best to Lucy, yet she left him. His efforts seem futile as he contemplates the thought that it might have been a case of right person, wrong timing. Chapter 3. Hurt and Betrayed. Jack's heartbroken realization. In the wake of Lucy's silence, Jack's emotional landscape turned tumultuous. Every nook and corner of his heart echoed with her name, his days spent in anxious anticipation, and his nights in a whirlwind of restlessness. The unanswered text served as a tangible confirmation of their estrangement, a stark reminder of his heartbreak. Jack was not just grappling with an ignored text, he was fighting the demons of a love lost, betrayal, and profound sadness. An unexpected realization hit Jack one chilly morning. While staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he saw a man who was lost, his eyes echoing pain, his soul bearing the weight of a heart that had loved and lost. Jack was still in love with Lucy. He wasn't just missing her, he was yearning for her, a yearning so profound that it hurt, and amidst the turmoil he felt betrayed, not by Lucy, but by his own heart. Why couldn't he move on? Why was he still tethered to a past that brought him more pain than pleasure? These questions gnawed at him. He felt deceived by his own emotions. He had tried to move on, to forget, to build a life without Lucy. Yet here he was, still aching for her. This was his heartbroken realization. Days turned into nights, and nights into days, but the realization hung over him like a dark cloud. His once cherished memories of Lucy turned into shards of glass, piercing his heart at the most unexpected moments. A familiar song on the radio, the smell of fresh coffee, a dog that resembled Lucy's. Each encounter was a bitter reminder of their shared past. Jack was trapped in a vicious cycle of hope and despair. There were times when he found himself hoping against hope that Lucy would reply, that they could find their way back to each other. Then there were times when he despised himself for holding on to that sliver of hope, for being so entangled in the past that he was unable to embrace his present. In his more rational moments, Jack knew he had to pull himself together. His emotional well-being was at stake, and if he didn't take control of the situation, he would drown in the depth of his despair. But every time he tried to shake off his feelings for Lucy, they clung tighter, drawing him back into the abyss of heartbreak. To the world, Jack wore a mask of normalcy. He went to work, met with friends, and carried on with life. But underneath the facade, his heart was in turmoil. It was a battle between his mind, urging him to move on, and his heart, refusing to let go of the love that once was. As the days wore on, Jack grew tired of the constant battle. It was emotionally draining, leaving him feeling hollow and exhausted. His heartache was a persistent shadow, following him everywhere. His feelings for Lucy were like a wound that refused to heal, a constant reminder of their love and subsequent heartbreak. Jack's journey wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about understanding himself. It was about acknowledging his feelings, his love for Lucy, and his heartbreak. It was about admitting that he was still in love with her, that he was hurt, and he felt betrayed by his own emotions. It was a painful realization, but it was the first step toward healing. His heart might have been bruised and his emotions in turmoil, but Jack found solace in the honesty of his feelings. He understood that his path to healing was not about forgetting Lucy, but about accepting their past and finding a way to live with it. And with this newfound understanding, Jack braced himself for the emotional journey that lay ahead, determined to heal, no matter how long it took. This is chapter 3 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 4. Jack starts seeing someone new, but finds it hard to forget Lucy. The past haunts him, and it becomes difficult to trust or feel properly loved by Ella. Chapter 4. New love, old wounds. Jack's struggle with Ella. Life had a peculiar way of surprising Jack. Just as he was attempting to grapple with his feelings for Lucy, Ella walked into his life. Ella, with her vibrant laughter that could light up the darkest room and eyes that sparkled with an unending zest for life. Ella was everything Lucy wasn't, yet Jack found himself in a constant struggle, torn between his past and his potential future. Ella was a breath of fresh air, bringing a sense of normalcy back into Jack's life. She was spontaneous, free-spirited, and seemed to carry an infectious energy that drew Jack towards her. Yet every time he looked into her eyes, he couldn't help but search for a familiar spark he once saw in Lucy's. Their connection was undeniable. Their conversations, filled with laughter and deep discussions, extended into the late hours of the night. With every passing day, Jack found himself increasingly drawn to Ella. The way her eyes twinkled when she spoke about her dreams, her infectious laugh, the warmth she exuded, it was all new and exciting. Despite his growing feelings for Ella, Jack was still haunted by his past. His heart still echoed with Lucy's name. His mind still replayed their shared memories. Ella was not Lucy, and he knew he couldn't and shouldn't compare. Yet his heart seemed to be in a constant tug of war, stuck between the love he had for Lucy and the burgeoning feelings he had for Ella. Ella, for her part, was patient and understanding. She saw the struggle Jack was going through and gave him the space he needed. Yet there were times when she felt like she was fighting a ghost of Jack's past that still held a significant part of his heart. As the days turned into weeks, Jack found himself growing more comfortable with Ella. They spent more time together, shared more about their lives, dreams, and fears. Ella was his confidant, his friend, his potential lover. Yet every step forward with Ella felt like a step away from Lucy. The guilt and confusion were overwhelming. He cared about Ella, perhaps more than he was ready to admit, but his heart still yearned for Lucy. Old wounds opened with every encounter that reminded him of Lucy, making it hard for him to fully embrace the new relationship. Jack's struggle was an internal one. He had to confront his feelings for Lucy to give his relationship with Ella a real chance. He had to acknowledge that moving on didn't mean forgetting, but accepting the past and allowing himself to love again. Every moment he spent with Ella made it clear that she was a part of his life now, a part he wanted to explore further. Yet, his heart still clung onto the remnants of his past. Jack's journey was becoming more complicated, a tale of new love and old wounds. Jack knew he had to make a decision. He couldn't keep Ella in the dark, couldn't let her be an unsuspecting victim of his unresolved feelings. He had to choose, face his past, let Lucy go and give Ella the love she deserved, or continue living in the shadow of his past, risk losing Ella, and remain stuck in his cycle of pain and heartbreak. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Jack found himself in deep contemplation. He had to face his fears, confront his past, and decide on his future. It was a tough decision, but it was one he knew he had to make, for his sake, for Ella's, and for the sake of their potential future together. This is chapter 4 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 5. Jack keeps tripping over memories of Lucy while trying to build a relationship with Ella, but his heart still yearns for the past, and he wishes he could turn back time. Chapter 5. Turning Back Love's Clock, Jack's Impossible Wish. One morning, Jack found himself standing in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him, revealing a man caught in the whirlwinds of his past and future. This was the day he had promised to make his decision, the day he was going to turn back love's clock. Maybe right person, wrong timing, Jack whispered to himself, remembering the lyrics from Teo Glacier's song that resonated so deeply with him. It was the phrase that epitomized his relationship with Lucy. He had loved her, and perhaps part of him always would, but they were not meant to be, at least not in this lifetime. Ella, on the other hand, was his present. She was his opportunity for a future filled with happiness, understanding, and a love that was different, yet just as intense. But how could he move forward when his heart was still chained to the past? Throughout the day, Jack found himself drifting into his memories with Lucy. He remembered their shared laughs, the comfort of her touch, their intimate whispers, and the familiarity of her gaze. He longed for those moments, yearning to turn back time, to fix what was broken, to relive the love they once had. It was an impossible wish, yet it was one that haunted him every moment of the day. At the same time, his moments with Ella flashed before his eyes. Her radiant smile, the feel of her hand in his, the spark in her eyes when she spoke about her dreams, their deep conversations that lingered into the night. With Ella, there was the promise of a future he had yet to explore. He had spent weeks battling with his feelings, trapped in an emotional tug-of-war between his past and his future. He realized he had been unfairly comparing Ella with Lucy, making Ella fight a battle she wasn't even aware she was a part of. He couldn't continue to hurt Ella or himself in this way. In his heart, he knew what he had to do. He had to let go of his past with Lucy, let go of the pain, the longing, and the memories that were holding him back. Only by releasing himself from his past could he truly give himself to Ella. Only then could he experience the love that Ella was offering him, a love that was present, tangible, and real. That night, Jack found himself sitting alone, pondering over the decision he was about to make. He was ready to close the chapter with Lucy, ready to turn the page and start afresh with Ella. It wasn't easy, and he knew the journey ahead would be full of challenges. But for the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Hope for a new beginning, hope for a love that was waiting for him, hope for a future he was ready to embrace. As the night deepened, Jack made his decision. He picked up his phone, dialed Ella's number, and as the phone rang on the other side, he braced himself for the conversation that would alter his life. He was ready to express his feelings, ready to embrace his future. His impossible wish to turn back love's clock was over. It was time to move forward. This is chapter 5 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 6, the final chapter. In a final confrontation, Jack and Lucy meet to settle their unresolved feelings. Will Jack find closure and finally be able to let go of Lucy and open his heart to Ella? Chapter 6. Heartbreak or closure? Jack confronts Lucy one last time. Jack's heart pounded as he approached Lucy's apartment. He hadn't planned this. It was only after his call with Ella that he felt an overwhelming need to seek closure. He needed to confront Lucy one last time, not for reconciliation, but for his own peace. He had spent so much time trapped in the cage of their past, and now it was time to set himself free. Knocking on her door, Jack felt a mix of emotions: anxiety, sadness, but most of all, determination. He was here for closure. As Lucy opened the door, her eyes widened in surprise. She had not expected to see him. Seeing her, the familiar figure who had once been the center of his world, made Jack's heart ache. But he remembered why he was here. They sat across each other in the same living room where they once shared laughter and sweet whispers. The silence was palpable. Finally, Jack gathered his courage and started speaking. He told Lucy about his feelings, his confusion, his guilt. He spoke about Ella and how he was torn between his past and the possibility of a new future. Lucy listened, her eyes welling up with tears. She too had her share of confusion and guilt. She apologized for the way things had ended between them and told him she too had moved on. It was a conversation they should have had a long time ago, but it was happening now, and in its own painful way, it was healing. As they opened up about their feelings, the atmosphere between them changed. The tension gave way to a shared understanding, a mutual respect for each other's journey. The love they once shared seemed a distant memory now, replaced by a kind of fondness that comes when you have shared something beautiful with someone, even if it didn't last. They shared one last hug, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history and a final goodbye. As Jack walked away from Lucy's apartment, he felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. It was the closure he had yearned for, the closure he needed to truly move on. Once back home, Jack picked up his phone and called Ella. With newfound resolve in his voice, he told her about his meeting with Lucy. He wanted no secrets between them. He expressed his commitment to their relationship and assured her that he had finally found closure with his past. Ella listened, her voice soft but understanding. As Jack confessed his feelings for her, she too confessed hers, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. This was their moment. A moment filled with promise and potential, a moment that signified the end of an old chapter and the beginning of a new one. As the chapter ends, Jack finds himself in a place of peace and resolution. He had confronted his past one last time and had come out stronger. He was ready now, ready to give his all to Ella, ready to step into a future brimming with love and hope. This is all 6 chapters of a 6-part short love story. If you have enjoyed this story, please show us some love by hitting the like button, and please consider subscribing to the Romance Diaries on YouTube to hear more stories like this one.